it is. But the Cavs got shellacked last night, plain and simple. And even, like I said, you want to say they've lost 3 out of 4. They should have choked that whole thing back up to Charlotte. If Charlotte wasn't playing as badly as they're playing, and if that game didn't start the way it did, you had the same issue there because they let Charlotte storm all the way back in that one here. So, I mean, defense. This isn't about chemistry. We're not talking about those things. This isn't who gets along with who or any of that. When the Cavs show up on defense, they're I don't want to say unstoppable, but they're right there with any team in the league. They can play ball when they're defending and when they're moving the ball around. As we know, they're getting on the boards, doing that stuff. But their offense, everything triggers through the Cavaliers' defense, man. But then they'll hit these lulls. And honestly, I think it was – look at how it dropped off coming off that 8-game streak. All of a sudden, you shook the early season off a little bit. You got your first extended run going for you, and then boom, bad habits creep right back in. Now you've got to nip them in the bud. You've got to come right back out and get back on the horse and defend. And I'm telling you, when this team figures that out, it's not even figuring it out when they just make the commitment defensively. And LeBron brought it up, and I'll give him that. He said, even though he could have said me as much as pointing out to others, but it's not about teams. It's not just about the switching, team defense, man defense. Get up on your man, you guys. You guys know me. I'm old school in all the sports anyway. I missed the day of that anyway. Go get your man, We're going to put this guy on this guy, and he's not going to score, man. And they would have that individual pride of locking your man down, and those one-on-one battles, they still exist. The good teams play man defense and team defense, and they play it well, and they commit every day. And you can say the good teams, you can easily start with the San Antonio Spurs, man. But anyways, Cavaliers, when they make that commitment to show up and defend every night, then they can win every single night, bar none, man. And that's it. And I just think some of it, I get the chemistry. They are still learning each other on the floor, but it's effort. That's laziness there is what that one is. We'll talk more about that. I've got Kendall Lewis calling in here on the hotline. Let's get the first break out of the way. Let's shift gears a little bit. I'll talk about it when we come back. Mike Pettine addressed Bernie Kosars' comments yesterday. He says they're moving the obstacles that are in the Browns' path of success that Bernie Kosar talked about. I found that to be an interesting quote. Let's talk about that, the debut of Johnny Football, and more with the BSK Kendall Lewis. He joins us to kick things off next here on the Sports Fix.
A public service announcement from the Sports Fix. We here at the Sports Fix and our affiliates would like to apologize for any disturbing verbal actions, but remember, it's better having them trapped in a box than loose on the streets. Public service announcement from the Sports Fix. The Sports Fix, the sports show that cares.
Sports Fix listeners, you've heard me talking about it. Millionaires being made all season long at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. I've been playing there too. It's now J-Rock's favorite one-week fantasy football site. What's one-week fantasy football? That means no season-long commitments. Play whenever you want. Have a player who's hurt? That's no problem at all because you change everything week to week. Injuries don't derail your chance at victory. It's a new season every week. You're never stuck with the same players. You can pick your team in just minutes and be on your way to winning huge cash. This season, one listener turned $10 into $5,000. Another turned $2 into $10,000. And a new millionaire has been crowned nearly every week this season at DraftKings.com. You could be next. Imagine winning $1 million in one day. $1 million just for playing fantasy football at DraftKings.com. Head to DraftKings.com now and use promo code Spreaker to play for free in the $10 million Fantasy Football World Championships. DraftKings.com. Bigger events, bigger winnings, bigger millionaires. Enter Spreaker now at DraftKings.com.
Hey, Sports Fix fans, I'm Fred McLeod, TV voice of the Cavaliers. When I'm not busy taking elbows from my buddy Austin Carr, I'm tuning in to see what the guys are saying. Come on, Cavs!
Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Oh, hey. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo, North Olmsted, all winter long. Harry Buffalo, join the herd. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts ring all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. .com. Have you gotten your copy of Cleveland's Finest yet? Highlighting the best moments, players, and media members in Cleveland sports history?
He won it! Elo hit a three-pointer on the side.
In-depth personal interviews with some of the top names in Cleveland sports fill the pages of this incredible book. Cleveland's Finest by Vince McKee is this year's must-have book for every Cleveland sports fan. Available now at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
You're listening to The Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Off and running now. The man, the BSK, Kendall Lewis, getting ready to join us here. Coming up next, you guys, which means I can't open the phones just yet. I'm going to get to them in the back end of the show. Of course, if you've got something to say and you just can't wait, hey, 216-539-7535. Leave your take, and I will get it. I'll get it on the air. But we're going to open up the phone. Sit tight later on in the show. But 216-539-7535 is the number to call when the time comes around. Facebook and Twitter. Be heard now. Say, hey, listen to me, doggone it. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE and email us, TheSportsFix@AOL.com. Like I said, can't call because the phones are occupied. Occupy the Sports Fix. I've heard that once or twice before. My man, the BSK, Kendall Lewis, is currently occupying the hotline. Let's talk to him now. Kendall, my friend, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Hey, I'm all right, man. Feeling good. We're rolling into the holidays. Always a little feel good around this time, even if the Browns are doing their doggonedest to take that away from us, but that's okay.
Well, you know what? I kind of give them a little bit of a pass at this time because, you know, with 2 games to go in the season, there are so many players across the league who have been shut down for the season due to injury. And some of these are on teams, for example, like the San Francisco 49ers. Now, what kind of wealth of talent do they have where they can lose just about every position except quarterback across the board, and they are still in the thick of the playoff hunt? I mean, that just says a lot to the overall talent on their team. You lose Patrick Willis, you lose Navarro Bowman, and you discover Chris Borland. Or you lose Ahmad Brooks, but you discover an Aaron Lynch. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The Arizona Cardinals still have the best record in the NFC, but have been beset by injuries to their top 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, defensive tackles, safeties, corners, and they're still the best team in the NFC by record. So they have the talent to withstand that. I don't think the Browns have the talent to, you know, withstand some of the hits they've taken to their offensive line, trading away of Ben Tate. We all thought, maybe not all of us, but the general belief was that he was a cancer. So now he's a cancer in the locker room, but only 4 months ago you were counting on him as a veteran, a young veteran who could play. So you remove him from the mix. Josh Gordon's been gone all year. Jordan Cameron has been in the concussion protocol. And it goes on and on. I mean, they lose their center. It just goes on and on, J-Rock. And so I think the Browns have still perform valiantly with the limitations in personnel that they have. Now, this recent situation with the Cincinnati Bengals, the 30-0 loss, would seem to indicate that the comments that Bernie Kosars recently made were on point. And if I can remind your listeners, and I'm sure most of them know, Bernie said that, I'm capsulizing, but basically the Browns organization is a mess. Their organization, their methodology, and their culture is a mess. So how could you really, thinking about it logically, expect anything but a mess? And so I would tend to believe that's right. And so when you have all of that, and then you insert a young quarterback in the mix in a key game, I mean, this is the game you have to funk or walk. In other words, either you win or you go home. And that's what they were up against, and they played a rookie, and they got what you get when you play rookies, nothing, generally, at quarterback. And so, it just goes to show that I don't believe Johnny Manziel was ready by his own admission. And so the Cleveland Browns suffered, scuttling what was the last gasp of one of the better seasons they've had in 15 back. And so now it's on to the next, on to Carolina, and trying to save a season in which they can still go 9-7. I think we can give them a pass on last week and pretty much the last few weeks because they've been so banged up.
You and I definitely want to ask you your thoughts a little more about the first time we saw Manziel and what we can see in the next 2 weeks from him. But you hit on Bernie Kosars, and I wanted to get into that anyway because Mike Pettine responded yesterday. And the one thing that I took out of what he said, most of what he said is, kind of what you would expect the head coach to say out of that. What's he going to do, bury his own organization? But I thought one of the key lines that he said in that was when he mentioned some of the obstacles still being moved out of the way to kind of get that thing out of the way as far as people stepping over each other in the front office and all of that. And I found that telling because to me, Mike Pettine has seemed all season to be a kind of guy who has been pretty straightforward, and even when he has been read between the lines, he's made it pretty easy for you to read between the lines of what he was saying, and that's what I took out of that line right there was, yeah, there is some truth to that, and perhaps even acknowledging that him and Ray Farmer know that, and they're working on streamlining some of that stuff in the organization. But I found it telling because I thought, well, that's a way of admitting there is still some of that we're trying not to have, but without coming out and saying, yeah, there's still some problems in the front office. I thought that was interesting the way he worded that.
Yeah, it was interesting and very telling. Let's start at the top with Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam has proven that he is an owner in the ilk of Mark Cuban, in the ilk of Jerry Jones, and the ilk of Dan Snyder. And I might be able to recuse Cuban because Cuban at least knows something about the sport that he owns. So he's less of a fan, more of a businessman, more of a typical owner than the others. I mean, Jerry Jones is, he's proven himself to be a brilliant, ahead of his time businessman. But as a football man, he's not the equal of some of the other GMs around the league. And as an owner GM, he pales in comparison to the great ones like Hallis or Paul Brown or any of those. But Jimmy Haslam, I think, fashions himself that way. And his fandom, his love of notoriety for the Cleveland Browns or himself or whatever, as a diversionary tactic away from Flying J, maybe. I don't know, but whatever it is, it seems clear to me and everyone I've talked to that the Johnny Manziel phenomenon was driven by Jimmy Haslam, possibly driven by correspondence between Manziels people and Jimmy Haslam, and